What's that? Thanks. No.
You know what I like about you? You know how to look at the clock. You read it.
Right. That's, you know, I'm a professional. Great. Yeah. Burp on the air. Good. Set. All right, good morning. We are your wake-up call. For some of you liberals that just hear that, it's, oh my gosh, I'm still in a flipping nightmare. I'm still, well, it's just going to get worse for you. It is the Ed Dean Radio Show, the #1 talk show in the state. We have the numbers to back it up. Broadcasting live on the Florida Radio Network, also through Clear Channel Broadcasting. And by the way, certain people have been emailing me. Yeah, listen, we're all over the map. We're on 5 days a week plus weekends and other Clear Channel stations and other radio stations throughout the state. We also have the drive time show from 5 to 7 that can also be heard. So email me and I'll give you all the dates. Our web guy is going to be reviewing the website. I know we've been saying it for the last week, but he's actually, he or she's going to be taking care of it. No, he's not a he, she. He and she. There's two people that actually take care of the website. So he's got to get that cleared out. And you'd be surprised. Anyways, the Ed Dean Radio Show, the email address, eddeanradio. eddeanradio@gmail.com. eddeanradio@gmail.com. Men, please do not be dismayed because your wives are waking up with me in the morning. It's better that they wake up with me in the morning than go to bed listening to me at night. That would get some people nervous. So, by the way, that has happened on radio before. But anyways, we're very humble. We're very blessed to have what we have. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, the email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. On your cell phones, it's iHeartRadio. Pretty much you can go to iHeart.com. That's iHeart.com. Type in the call letters WAXE, like waxy, WAXE. Again, if you want to watch us live on the air, just go to eddeanradio.com. That's Ed Dean, DEAN, eddeanradio.com. Jody, what time did you go to bed last night? That's early. That's early for me. I didn't go to bed till midnight last night because I was told. I mean, they cut into well, Hannity wasn't that big of a deal cut into his show. So they cut in Shepard Smith. By the way, he's from Florida, by the way, in East Central Florida. So I thought it was like a WrestleMania. I mean, Ferguson, the protests, the riots. And I stayed up. I was up this morning at 4 o'clock, so I stayed up around midnight to see what was going on, and nothing happened. Excuse me. In fact, nothing should be happening. I'm serious. You got people coming from California, for crying out loud, to where's this? This is Missouri, right? St. Louis? I mean, don't some of you, white people, black people, doesn't matter. What in the world is going on here? We're going to have this big debate come up in the next hour. Black conservative radio talk show host Willie Lawson, along with my other good friend, sports and political commentator Dan Ruas, will have this debate about Ferguson. Is Mississippi burdened, folks? Really? It's not happening. Also coming up, Mariana Mancusa. You see her on Newsmax TV. And then our good friend Kevin Derby from the Sunshine State News is all going to join us here in just a little bit here. Now, so I come in, I usually know what I'm going to do. I come in a half hour prepared, what I'm going to do on the radio show. And I hate it when people dictate my radio show. What do I mean by that? So Jody comes walking in, our executive producer. Jody comes walking in about 10 minutes till and pulls out the newspapers. And here I'm going, my goodness, man. And what happens is I have to okay, there is a revision of history in schools today. Would you not agree? Thank you. I see your hand. I agree with you. Is there not a revision when it comes to history? Is there not a revision from those of newspaper columnists? Well, this is where I'm going here. And I should know, my field was financial, but in my younger days, I was a news reporter. In fact, I still do news reporting for some publications. But being a news reporter is that's what my trade was. I covered politics and finance. And yet I'm allowing these guys who are controlling my life. What's going on here? So Jody brings in a newspaper. I got everything ready to go. We got some great stories lined up for you today. And then I see this gal, and I'm not trying to make her my number one piece, but Eve Samples. That's her name, Eve Samples. You can tell that's a fake name. Anyways, Eve Samples has an article for the Scripps News Service about, listen, I don't even want to talk about it right now. Let me do it at the bottom of the half hour. But about what is the role of the state and federal government when it comes to your property, when it comes to the water issues, when it comes to the wetland issues. And evidently, people do not understand the breakdown of the 10th Amendment, the Second Amendment. We totally ignore the First Amendment, totally not ever abide by the 14th Amendment. In fact, we make up things in the 14th Amendment. We abuse and we bastardize the Interstate Commerce Clause. And this is a perfect example about what is the federal government's role when it comes to, well, you guessed it, the Clean Air and Water Act. By the way, passed by a Republican president back in 1990-1991, George H.W. Bush. I will get to this at the bottom of the half hour, and I will prove to many of you on the environmental front, to many of my Republican friends who think Amendment 1, by going after more money for dock stamps to save water, and by the way, I'm born and raised in the state, water is a key issue with me, but we have enough land out there to take care of the water. Now we're being told, propagandized by those of the environmental movement, that now we need to buy more land. I will debunk this one more time. Again, it's not about political ideology. It is about, well, maybe it is, but to me it's not about the parties. It is about the issues. And many of us out there are being, well, we're being clouded up by these issues. So I'll get to this here in just a little bit. By the way, you want to raise it? Did you see that article today, Jody, about the from the AP? Today's child will cost. You want a kid today? By the way, $250,000. $250,000. Now, to some of my friends out there in the religious world, who I adore very much, you think that the goal of getting married is to procreate? Okay, that's fine. I'm not going to ignore that. My goal to marry was to have a partner, not one of those partners. I'm talking a female partner. Oh, I got to watch what I say here. 4 hours sleep does wonders on the brain here. Sorry. So, anyways, you know, when a man and a woman should leave their parents and cling to their opposite man or woman, that's the way it should go. Now, I mean, I know some religions. I mean, I know the Catholic faith, and I'm not a Catholic. You know, we got to get married to procreate. I got nothing wrong with that. But some of us get married to have a partner, man. We want the best friend. I don't want the soulmate. I never bought in that soulmate crap. Because if you get a divorce, what about your next guy? Is he your soulmate? So I believe in you want a partner like a sports team member. You could be down by 5-0, but you're not going to give up. You're going to go all the way to the end, win or lose. You guys still high five. That's the kind of relationship you need. It's not difficult, folks. Trust me, I know these things. I'm a male. We know it all, correct? So, anyways, that's how we perceive. I don't know it all. The bottom line here: $250,000 to raise one kid. So let's say, 18, 20 years old. Do you know $250,000 over 20 years would make you a filthy, filthy, filthy rich millionaire? Trust me, from a financial advisor as I am, I can tell you. Believe me. So, anyways, $250,000. There we go on that one. Hey, are you ready for this? Hillary Clinton being thrown under the bus again. Where's this article here? I'm going to talk about this in a little bit. Good Morning America. Throwing Hillary Clinton under the bus as they say that she is too lavish for speaking demands. Again, she is the Messiah cleaning up the other Messiah's mess. Again, she's out there for the working man and working woman. And let me get this straight one more time. Nobody itching to complain. Nobody itched and complained about John Kerry, who's worth millions and millions of dollars. All these rich Democrats out here, but again, the party for the rich is the Republicans. I will point out that when you look at the maps, all your blue states, all your richest communities, the majority of them are rented by, are represented. Yeah, that too. They're represented by Democrats. In the state of Florida, excluding maybe Vero Beach and Naples, the majority of your rich counties are blue in this state, and they're all represented by Democrats. So we'll talk about that also here. And you ready for this? Democratic Representative Ron Baxter has now joined the list of patriotic lawmakers who want to know that want you to know that they're going to live with Obamacare. In the words of Representative Barber and other Democrats, who have forgotten, by the way, that the lawmakers exempted themselves from Obamacare. Hey, by the way, great discussion, and I wish many of my liberal friends could tell me this, because when I have these debates on my radio shows throughout the state, why is it if this bill is so flipping good, why was it that the biggest promoters of the AFL-CIO, the SEIU, a lot of labor unions out there, along with the AARP, Americans Against Retired People, and all these Democrats out there, voted to exempt themselves from the Unaffordable Health Care Act? You got an answer for me? And now you wonder why. And I got to tell you something, folks. I'm usually the first one against lawsuits to overturn certain measures. I say you voted in as a vote. But, this is one area where, the left is notorious for... by the way, the left never gave up on getting in for same-sex marriage. The Defense of Marriage Act, which was passed by Democrats, the Defense of Marriage Act was and Republicans, also signed into law in 1996 by then of a Democrat, Bill Clinton. And for years, they wanted to overthrow this. And they finally got what they wanted. So some of my conservative friends, hey, there is hope. Hopefully it won't take that long. But we'll discuss this issue again. Democrats exempting themselves from the Unaffordable Health Care Act. Also, coming up the next hour, we'll talk about the Ferguson thing going on, Mississippi burning, Hillary Clinton and her lavish lifestyle. The latest poll numbers out show Rick Scott up by 3 points. environmental protection. Some of your emails on my numbers not being correct, why Mitt Romney lost. I will have to prove to you again why I am right. Listen, unlike the liberal left, I do know math. So we'll talk about all this coming up here on the other side of the break. The email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. Watch me live on the air at eddeanradio.com, eddeanradio.com. Back in a few moments. I love this song. "20 minutes after the top of the hour, syndicated all throughout the state. It is the Ed Dean Radio Show. We got a whole list of guests coming up in the next hour and a lot of issues to talk about this hour. Democrats must be feeling the pinch, I think, when it comes to the Unaffordable Health Care Act, better known as Obamacare. Because now Democrats are starting to say, for example, like, is it Ron Barber out of Arizona, who says now that he's going to, his employer government plan, the thousands of dollars he gets, he's going to roll into Obamacare now. Okay, well, this thing was only passed, I don't know what, 4 years ago. So, whoa. It's re-election time. And the Republicans may pick up more seats in the House. And man, the numbers just show that still. And by the way, this has always been consistent. About 53 to 54%, maybe 55, give or take which day you're polling, says that nobody likes the Unaffordable Health Care Act, better known as Obamacare. So many Democrats who are in races, in tight races, are looking at this going, man, maybe we need to practice what we preach. So many of these Democrats now say that they're going to pledge the full amount of their government subsidies to Arizona charities each month during 2014 from here on out, and take the taxpayer subsidies that they get and use it for Obamacare. But as The Wire and YahooNews.com, you guys exempted yourself from Obamacare, as the article points out. And yet, they want to know that they feel, hey, man, that's right, we feel your pain. They want to know that they feel your pain out there. Thank you. Yeah, I felt the pain on March and April 2010, and yet after this thing is enacted, well, okay, 2012, and it was fully, but I mean, parts of Obamacare were there. The bottom line is now. I mean, listen, I'll tell you what I'll even do. I'll even cut you flipping liberals some slack. A year ago, when the website came out back in October of 2013, when many people were signing up and didn't want to sign up, and couldn't get on the website, and didn't want to sign up based on the cost and based on the looking like behind your back of all the information you have to give. I mean, talk about invasion of privacy. Many people didn't sign up because of that as well. So almost a year later, many of you Democrats are now out there saying, hey, we feel the rest of your all's pain out there. We want to act like we're in touch with the average American, even though you're not going to be able to save the $2,500, even though you're not going to be able to keep your plan, is what was told, is what was said. And by the way, the Unaffordable Health Care Act, which we also were told was also going to cut the deficit in half, which isn't happening. Not at least from that, it's not. So now all these Democrats are now coming up going, hey, we're going to act like the rest of you. Even though we exempted ourselves, and we exempted so many other groups out there, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to sit back and say, we're going to enroll into Obamacare. The question is why didn't they do this like 4, 5, 6, 7? Why not like almost 10 months ago? Why are they doing it now? Why? Because it's almost September the 1st. You know what happens after Labor Day? Everybody starts focusing on the general election. And again, let me ask any of you liberals out there, if this bill was so flipping good, why is it that the AARP, the SEIU, the AFL-CIO, and dozens, now that's being conservative. Do you know that over almost, was it 1,300 groups have been wanting to exempt themselves from Obamacare, and some of the biggest, or were some of the biggest promoters of Obamacare. Why? Because as Richard Trumka said from the AFL-CIO, it is the unintended consequences. Because remember, when you're at the part-time, you ain't got to worry about doing so much with the Obamacare. You're at full-time at 29 hours or 28 hours, you now have to spend mandated through the employer mandate to spend money on your employee, which means if you're full-time, guess what? Either you get laid off or you get knocked back to part-time. And that is what's going to take place. And I told everybody, and not them saying that I'm right, I am a political prophet, I am a political Nostradamus. I sat back and said at the beginning of the year, things are going to slow down over the summertime. There will not be much debate about Obamacare once the sign-ups was done, and then things are going to revamp back in September. As I said before, and the Republicans should have, you know, sometimes these Republicans do not get their act together. I should know. I can say this. But everything, stop saying, well, it's going to be major job loss in 2014. The reason why you've not seen major job loss or there is movement to part-time that employers full-time cannot handle it because of the mandate. But the big increases come in 2015 and 2016. And remember, the employer mandate has not been enacted yet. So when you see even some of those states that have the Medicaid expansion, where, for example, Florida is going to see 15% cost, 13.5%, rounded off, almost 15%. That data did not include what employers will have to put out with the employer mandate. Now, I've had liberals that listen to this radio show sit back and go, well, the problem is, Ed, is again, you're not implementing the state-run Medicaid. And I put it on this radio show many times. You can employ the state-run Medicaid. New York and other states have the state-run Medicaid provision of Obamacare, and their prices are going up almost by 7 to 10%. The bottom line is that through the free market, if people come on state-run Medicaid through attrition, been laid off, somebody passed away, that is how the market works. This is not happening. Many people are going on to state-run Medicaid because through the government, through the federal government, they're now being kicked off of their own private health insurance company, group health insurance plan. Now they have to go on the state-run Medicaid. Which means if more people go on Medicaid, the rolls, R-O-L-L-S, means the number of people in state-run Medicaid, they go up. Which means the state has to pay for it. Which means the state is going to have to end up raising your taxes. So you think, well, I mean, the Affordable Health Care Act, I mean, people are becoming, I mean, the uninsured has dropped. Well, if you put in state-run Medicaid, well, duh. But of course, the federal government and many of the liberals out there will not tell you the reason why some people are on state-run Medicaid. In fact, I still can't get the federal government to tell me how many's paid for their premiums. Oh, but you're going to have to pay the claim. So to all the liberals out there, this is a big issue. If liberals like this so much, and you want to brag about the 26-year-old living at home with their mom and the pre-existing conditions, then go ahead. I've always sat back and said we could have dealt with the bill to deal with the pre-existing conditions instead of overhauling the whole system here. And again, let me throw this question at you one more time. We were told that 40 million Americans did not have health insurance. By the way, you know who the majority of those are? Young people that could afford it but don't want to afford it because they want to pay for a brand new car. That's always been the case since the 1990s. So let's say that 40 million Americans, did you know that healthcare.gov has had 80 million visits? And only 7 to 8 million people have signed up. Let's say it was 40 million people. And they're told they're going to get true, low-cost, affordable health care. 10% of 40 million is 4%. 20% is 8. So only 20% of the uninsured have signed up. You mean to tell me 100 people came into my store to buy goods, but only 20? That's 20%? I mean, 100 people visited my store, but only 20 people bought goods? The numbers don't add up. 1,000 people came to my store, but only 200 people bought goods, 20%. How can you afford to stay in business? You can't for so much long. And yet, this is, to me, one of the biggest issues out there. Now it's about the cost, and the numbers don't add up. When we come back from the break, this Eve Samples, again, this lady's somehow always interrupting my morning life here because she's big on the environmental kick. I will have to prove again where she is absolutely dead wrong when it comes to water restrictions in the Clean Air Water Act from federal versus state. Back in a few moments. Don't forget you can watch us live on the air at eddeanradio.com. eddeanradio.com, the email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com. This is the Ed Dean Radio Show. Pretty. Oh. Oh.
About 20 seconds.
Wow, so I'm going to take a nap. All right, 33 minutes after the top of the hour. It is the fastest 2 hours anywhere in Florida Talk Radio. It is the Ed Dean Radio Show. If you want to watch me live on the air, you can go to the website at eddeanradio.com, eddeanradio.com, the email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. Twitter is at eddeanradio, facebook.com/eddeanradio. Mariana Mancuso, Kevin Derby come up at the top of the hour. And also at 7:30 at the bottom of next hour, Dan Ruas and Willie Lawson going to join us as well. So, Eve Samples, who, and I'm not trying to throw her under the bus. I mean, we've had to point out some, okay, we had to point out certain things that she really did not report. She's got an article from the Scripps News Service posted in the Indian River Press Journal about she does the environmental. She's a columnist on the environment. She has this environmental kit. So a couple weeks back, we had to kind of clear up certain things because she got out there and was really throwing Rick Scott. By the way, I'm not holding water for Rick Scott. Again, I point out the issues. It's got nothing to do with the political parties. I point out the issues on the Ed Dean Radio Show. And she came out, Rick Scott gutted the DEP and the environmental stuff here in the state of Florida. What he gutted was the duplicity of the overregulation. For example, if you got St. Johns River Water Management or the South Florida Water District, which I had no problem if you wanted to really not cut in half, they're pretty much useless. And if they have their own regulations, why do we need to have more on a state level? And we cut some waste there. So that's what happened. So anyway, she comes out with an article today. She says that 4 decades, that's for you liberals, that's 40 years, Congress passed the Clean Water Act, by the way, which was passed by passed by Richard Nixon back in the 70s, and then of course George H.W. Bush did its own version back in 1990, 1991. She says the powers that still be can't agree about how to apply this federal law. The courts have been all over the place. Farmers, ranchers, and other landowners have their own ideas. She goes, but at the heart of the debate is this question. Quote, which bodies of water should be regulated as what the laws calls waters of the United States? Now, she says lakes, rivers, and other navigable waterways are a no-brainer. Well, okay, well, answer my question then. Is that part of, does the federal government oversee those, or does the state oversee those? She's pretty much talking about a bill, Steve Sutherland, in the north part of the state of Florida, H.R. 578, that would stop the federal agencies from overstepping their boundaries, from creating rules that define the waters of the United States. So pretty much what's going on that Sutherland and some of the other Republicans are doing is that the EPA is overstepping their boundaries again, and now they want to mandate which more waters or which other waters that are state waters should be part of the federal government out there. Ms. Samples reports on yesterday, an alliance of 50 environmental groups known as the Florida Conservation Coalition announced its opposition to the bill. Quote, these rules are clarifying the ambiguity. I got the right word around. The ambiguities in a way that should make regulated communities live much easier. So what they're saying is the federal government's going to come in and make things much more easier for them. So the article continues. E. Samples says, let's say that Steve Sutherland is right to assume property owners would be forced to comply with the Clean Water Act. Even with its reasoning, this would be short-sighted. Sutherland's concerns were only concerns about the cost of the property owners, not the cost imposed on the broader public when waterways are polluted by industry. Now, may I tell you something before we break into this again? Red tide that will kill manatees is not caused by man. Some of the algae out there is not caused by man. Cold weather that kills fish, that kills manatee, that can kill the seagrass is not caused by man. The majority of deaths among manatees is not caused by man. It's caused by Mother Nature. In fact, your seagrass being all eaten up is not caused by man, but it's caused by an animal called the manatee. Now, I am all open for the debate. I've covered this about pesticides and runoffs. I'm all for that debate. Something has to be done. The Indian River Lagoon needs to be cleaned. Some of my conservative friends disagree with me. Well, I mean, guys, I'm not an environmentalist. I'm a conservationist. I just have a difference of opinion in how I present a plan. I present a plan with other conservationists out there. The problem is that the liberal left can't present a plan. It's just spend, tax, spend more money. They don't have to like my plan. At least I got one. There is an issue that needs to be talked about runoff. There is an issue that needs to be talked about the Indian River Lagoon. Water is a big issue in the state. I acknowledge it. I'm a conservative. I'm all over for the debate. Unfortunately, many of my conservative friends don't want to buy into it because they believe that the same hysteria that runs rampant in the environmental movement is hysteria on the national level is the same thing that happens on a local level, and that's just not the case. The National Environmental Front is different than the local environmental front. The local environmental front has nothing to do with the ozone or global warming or gas emissions. Now, on the constitutionality part, is the feds do not own the waterways in a state. Even when the St. Johns River, let's say the St. Johns River was to connect with Georgia, does that mean the feds own it? No, it does not. If the Fed, okay, in the good old days when you had commerce and interstate commerce, well, Congress is supposed to regulate this, Ed. You're exactly right. Let me tell you how it happened. Let me give you guys a quick history lesson. Florida would sign an interstate agreement with Georgia with trade, transportation, and whatsoever. Congress was the judge. So basically for years, Florida and Georgia would have this law that was passed. It was agreed to by their legislature, agreed by the Florida legislature. They didn't need some special bureau from D.C. to cover this. And there was an interstate commerce agreement between the states. Congress oversaw them, so one state didn't give the other state a shaft. That's all the role of Congress was. And now what has happened is because special money now, it's special, all right, because federal money is now involved when it comes to all these jacking up the speed limit and raising the blood, or lowering the blood alcohol. And Congress and Republicans and Democrats for the last 50, 60 years have been taking federal money because now interstate commerce. I-95 goes all the way through Virginia and Maryland. I don't know about Maryland, but it goes all the way up to New York and Florida and Georgia. Congress gets to oversee that. Well, I mean, technically, there is an interstate commerce there. But does that mean because we've overstepped our boundaries? Yeah, we've done that. But there's an interstate agreement between the states. Congress is just the judge. In case Georgia wanted to bring a lawsuit against Florida, that sat back and said, Florida's not agreeing to our trade agreement, then Congress stepped in. That was the role of interstate commerce. Of course, now, forget about it. It's totally been bastardized. It's totally been abused. Pretty much like the rest of the Constitution. But we don't talk about that. And yet, let me throw this out there at you. If Congress believes that they can totally regulate the whole industry, then why in the world do I have Florida highway patrolmen paid for by the state of Florida to patrol people's speed? Why is it that I have county sheriffs that patrol the interstate, I-95, I-75, if Congress is going to oversee everything? Is Congress paying for those bills? No, it comes from you, the taxpayer. I mean, if the government really wants to regulate it, then let them have their own little federal enforcement. I mean, I don't support that. But the regulation of waters, because, whoa, the Swanee River may go into Georgia. That doesn't mean Congress has the authority. And unfortunately, Republicans and Democrats have been taking money through the Department of Agriculture and the DEP through land use water regulations or land use ordinances or water regulations so the states can have more money because the states cannot control their own back pocket. So when the government waves a sweaty wad of green money, I mean, oh, heck yeah, why not take it? I mean, come on, Uncle Sugar, throw me some down here, would you? I mean, when they did that, it opened, it's like in the movie Terminator 3, it turned on the machines. Now the machines have taken over. And yet we're told it's all based on interstate commerce. Bottom line on the constitutionality, I don't care if the federal government did throw the money. The states shouldn't have taken it. But number two, the federal government does not have the right underneath the 10th Amendment, and the Department of Environmental Protection, last time I saw, was not constitutionally authorized in the federal government. So what the federal government is quiet on, as far as the federal laws, is left to the interpretation of the states. If the state of Florida wants to have its own environmental protection, and they do, and if the state of Florida wants to put regulations on certain waterways, they have every right to do that. I may disagree on the state level, but listen, at least it's on a state level, not a federal level. So evidently, some of our newspaper columnists, with all due respect, do not know the breakdowns of how the role of the constitutional powers are in the 10th Amendment and everything else, and also interstate commerce clause. A few months back, I got into there was this columnist, he worked for Bob Martinez. His name was Allison DeFore. Nice guy. Wrote an article in the Sunshine State News, one of the most popular publications here in the state, about the reasons why we should support Amendment 1. Amendment 1 is going to come up in November, not next week, but come up in November. And Amendment 1 wants to take more of your dock stamp. This is money you pay for certain taxes in real estate and all that kind of stuff. And they want to increase the amount of more of the lands they can buy. Folks, how many lands do we have to buy? Vero's done it. Florida's done it. Daytona Beach has done it. Brevard County has done it. And we've overpaid land. If the land was worth $300,000, we paid $1,300,000 for it. We've overpaid for this nonsense. And for the purpose to leave it to the kids, baloney. Florida forever. Absolutely baloney. By the way, go ask Charlie Crist what saving the Everglades in Florida forever has done to the sugar jobs down in South Florida. Hundreds of jobs have been lost. All for the protection of the environment. And yet Amendment 1 is being supported out there by some of these moderate green Republicans. Now, there's a difference between green and green. I'm all about the green in my back pocket. These guys, well, yeah, they're about green in the back pocket. I mean, they're crony capitalists as well. But they're promoting Amendment 1, and how they're doing it is by, Richard Nixon and Teddy Roosevelt and George H.W. Bush. So I wrote an article back, and I was like, listen, let's get this straight. Teddy Roosevelt is not the environmentalist that today's environmentalists would be like. But if you want to play the party politics, forget about it. Teddy Roosevelt, one of the problems that we have with some of the land grabs and some of the stuff out west is because of Teddy Roosevelt. The beginning of the Sierra Club. Some of the land grab movements, all because of Teddy Roosevelt. Richard Nixon, so he's trying to implore Republicans to vote for this bill, so he's running off a bunch of Republican names that were all pro-environmentalists out there. Talk about Richard Nixon. I said, yeah, Richard Nixon was one of the worst. EPA, OSHA, Endangered Species Act. Oh, can I keep going? And then he's talking about George H.W. Bush in the 1991 Clean Air Water Act, which pretty much says that Congress can dictate what is a wetland. Well, if you look at Florida, every piece of property is a wetland, especially all the rain we've got. It's a wetland out here. And the federal government's going to dictate what is a wetland on a state level. This is the abusiveness of the EPA. This has nothing to do with interstate commerce. So by all means, and I understand where Ms. Samples is coming from, we need to talk about cleaning up the Indian River Lagoon. I agree with that. Why can't we do both? Why can't we save taxpayers' money? Why can't we save property owners' money? Let's deal and how we deal with the runoff, and how we deal with the drainage system, and how we deal with making sure that water stays clean in this state without the typical nonsense, oh, let's just tax. Well, okay, fine. How are we going to clean it up? They can't give you an answer. So every day, I have to come on this show to revise their revision of history. And I'm doing it every day. That's fine. What I was born to do, I guess. And yet we will continue to do it here on the Ed Dean Radio Show. Again, the environmental movement needs to know what the environmental movement is all about. Are you a conservationist or are you an environmentalist? Conservationists get things done. Environmentalists just get your back pocket done, and that's overdone or well done. Back in a few moments, this is the Ed Dean Radio Show. Let's see if she's on Facebook. Can we turn the air on? Can we turn the air on? Just a little one. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
You're coming in after the next one for about 17 seconds.
Okay. So I just sent her a Facebook ad, Joe, to use samples. Kind of attractive. I like it. All right. Well, I don't want to think I was beating her up. I mean, listen, there are a lot of good conservatives that want to save the lagoon. We just have different routes of doing it. It's kind of like taxes. The liberal left and the right believe that we need more money in people's back pockets. Do we not agree with that? Yes, we do. The difference is I do it more through the free market. I do it through reductions in people's spending. Unfortunately, the liberals believe that if we spend more money, then we redistribute the wealth, then we get more money in people's back pockets. Well, the problem is the difference is tax breaks can be permanent for years. At least you know when you balance your books, at least you know when you forecast things down the road based on tax breaks, how much money you'll have in each year, especially if the tax reductions are lowered. From one year to the other, it's at 28%, then the next year it goes down to 25%. You can base your books, investments, your profit sharing, sometimes based on some of that. At least it gives you an idea. The problem is once you spend the money and the money's not there based on the economy, you've got to get that money from somewhere else. But evidently, liberals think that, hey, there has to be a Xerox out there that just prints green money, kind of like what we've seen with Ben Bernanke and Janet Yellen and all these other guys for years. I mean, the one that we just created and everything else. So, anyways, let me explain something else here on the environmental front, is that the environment has to be important. I don't support drilling in the Everglades. I support drilling off the coast of Florida. I mean, imagine the $2 billion worth of revenue you could come in to clean up the environment, that you could take care of education. It's amazing. You throw a rational reasoning out there, liberals still won't take it. And yet, liberals believe, oh, if we just put a higher tax on hunting licenses, if we put another higher tax on fishing licenses, that'll somehow take care of the environment. Wrong. You have to have a plan to take care of the environment. The problem that we've seen on Charlie Crist, the problem we've seen, I mean, and some of the Republicans that are pro-environment, I mean, you got Rick Scott in a big debate fest right now on who spent more money on the environment. I don't give a flip. The bottom line is I'm not going to be voting for somebody that brags about spending more money than this guy and spending more money in that situation. The bottom line here is that how do you plan to do it? What is your plan? You don't have to like the Republicans' plan. I agree with you. You don't have to like it. But they have a plan. Where is the Democrats' plan? Where's the Democrats' plan to fix state-run Medicaid? Let's have the Obama expansion. I ain't going to do it. Give me another reason why. Where's the Democrats' plan to bring in more jobs to the state? What's the Democrats' plan to fix the roads here? What's the Democrats' plan to fix education? It's always fixing. It's never fixed. It's just always fixed or want to be fixed. What is the Democrats' plan when it comes to the issue of the environment? Stop talking about it and do something about it. And some of the Republicans are going to use, well, you know, Jeb Bush in Florida forever. I think Jeb was a great governor. I didn't agree with all the land buys of Florida forever. And by the way, one of the reasons why underneath Charlie Crist and Rick Scott, that money for Florida forever was practically at a standstill. We had a recession, folks. And by the way, would somebody ask Charlie Crist this question? You got, now the numbers float around quite a bit. 10 billion, some would say 15. I've heard others tell me 20. I've had news reporters tell me $20 billion came into the state through stimulus. So some of my Democratic friends, if the environment, I want to ask you this, if the environment buying up lands, Florida forever, was at a standstill. Now, they all want to blame Rick Scott, but a lot of this started in Charlie Crist and the Republicans. Mr. Stimulus. $20 billion. Did any of that buy up Florida forever? Did that buy up lands? I mean, we certainly were building overpasses for turtles. Oh, that's true. We had Bike Pass in South Florida, Bike Pass to nowhere. We were helping out the environment through green tech energy, doing up solar panels. Yeah, how's that going? How's that providing jobs? The green environment, could it work? Maybe. But it only works through the free market being supported by the free market. Who's the free market? You're listening to them. I'm talking to them. Men and women. That is the free market. The free market sits back and says, yeah, I mean, if I have a green solar panel, whatever, it's going to save money and produce more energy or vice versa. If you want that, the market decides. If you believe that having a green building, if you believe that having a Prius, if you believe that having a hybrid car is the right way to go, then you make that decision. Unfortunately, the problems we have today is that the decisions are being pushed by government, by the state, and by the feds. And yet it is their market-driven, but not the free market-driven. They believe because the government can dictate and regulate it that the rest of everybody will fall into line. The environmental kick in this state through Charlie Crist and other individuals out there to promote high-tech energy jobs did not sell because why? The market did not produce that. Does the market produce ecotourism? Yes. Does the market produce a green type of an economy? In some sectors, yes, but overall it's like 5–10%. The reason why that people are coming to Florida, unfortunately for some of my Republican friends out there, and primarily many of you liberals that believe that the environment is bringing people to the state, I agree. But it's the environment of Hard Rock. It's the environment of SeaWorld. It's the environment of Disney. It's the environment of Universal Studios out there. It's the environment of the Islands of Adventure. It's the environment of football. It's the environment of warm weather. Many people think that the reason why they're coming to Florida is the environment. I agree, but it's not the green environment. We had a plethora. Can I say that word? We had a vast amount of people come to Florida this year, and the environmentalists are saying, oh, it's because of our ecotourism. That's baloney. It's because of warm weather. We had, well, did we just advocate global warming? Oh, climate change and whatever. It was because of the warm weather. That's the reason why they came down. They didn't come down because they wanted to go canoeing. I will match Disney any day of the week to the ecotourism crowd out there, and Disney will overwhelmingly rule every day. Ecotourism is good for the East Coast. Ecotourism is good for freshwater. I love it. I'm born and raised here. As a boy who hunted with my father and still fishes to this day, I want a clean environment, but not the way that many of you liberals are going down this path. The ecotourism is done through the market. There is a market for ecotourism in several sectors. It is not the overruling factor of the way that economy does in that city based on that. If it was Clewiston, Florida, based on bass fishing, I understand that. But most of, I can hear you a little bit. Most of what we see in the environmental movement is being pushed onto us by the federal government, by the state government. It is not being market driven. For example, when people buy cars have a better gas mileage, that should be done through the free market, and we saw that in 2007 and 2008. Why? Because we had gasoline prices at $4 plus a gallon. So the market sits back and says, I want to buy a more affordable car like I did. I got 3 vehicles. I got a truck. I want to buy a more affordable truck instead of my Dodge that gets 16 miles a gallon compared to my Chevy that gets, I don't know, 24 miles a gallon. It's driven by the free market. Unfortunately, we have things pushed out there by the federal government who believes that they are the free market. All right, coming up next, Mariana Mancuso, Kevin Derby, the latest poll numbers, Rick Scott's up ahead, and Hillary Clinton's lavish lifestyle. Back in a few moments, second hour coming your way, eddeanradio.com, eddeanradio.com. Also, email is eddeanradio@gmail.com.
Kevin's on the line.
All right. Man, I forgot what one of my trucks I had. I couldn't believe it. Wow. Excuse me.
They may have a little trouble hearing each other because they're going to be low. Otherwise, they'll echo. So just for some reason, if it sounds like they didn't hear the question, you might want to reiterate.
All right. I gotta kill time. I gotta pick up my suit at the tailor at 9 here in Vero, so I gotta kill time for an hour. That means I'll either take a nap in the back if the almighty Rhett will allow me. Man.
He's got Bible study today, so he might shoot in just before that, and he'll be gone till 9.
Oh man, I know who this guy is. All right, hour number 2, the Ed Dean Radio Show, broadcasting all throughout the states, right here on the Florida Radio Network, also through Clear Channel Broadcasting. The email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. The email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com. Watch us live on the air. It's eddeanradio.com. Twitter's at eddeanradio, facebook.com/eddeanradio. Also on iHeartRadio, just go to iHeart.com and type in WAXE. Kevin Derby, senior political writer for the SunshineStateNews.com, and Mariana Mancuso, political commentator. So I'm talking reading over on Newsmax. So now, Kevin, I'm reading another poll result here. Hold on, let me pull this up. This came from okay, the 50-plus voter group by the way, who is this group that's got Rick Scott at 40 to 47? It says that Florida voters 50 and over are voting for Rick Scott 40 to 47. Okay, well, which one can you comment on? Okay, let me interrupt. I'm sorry. The AARP sponsored a poll, and that's what it is. And it shows right now Rick Scott's up among 50 plus, 40 to 47 to 40. But the St. Pete, excuse me, the Tampa Bay ComWeb webpage shows that also these numbers were the same when Alex Sink had him beat 51-47. So these numbers might be upside down. Right. Mariana Macuso, this is like the Real Clear average. You know, you get a Real Clear Politics. They have average of all these national numbers out there. Here in Florida, they get 1 week it's Chris, 1 week it's Rick Scott. I know what Mariana's going to say. She's going to tote the party line here, so I'll ask you anyways, Mariana. If the election were held today, who would win? Yeah, but remember that was a big Republican year, and he could barely pull it off. I don't know if this is going to be a huge Republican year. I mean, you got one of the worst PR governors out there, and Rick Scott, whose numbers should be up by 10 points. Kevin Derby, are Republicans using photos with Rick Scott? And do you think they will use photos with Governor Rick Scott when they campaign primarily in this state? Do you think they'll campaign with Rick Scott for the November elections? Which is smart. You know, Marianne, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. A week from today is the primaries. Very, except for some of your communities and some of the counties in the state of Florida, there isn't anything really sexy. It's going to be very interesting to see how much Nana Rich, who's going to lose, probably lose pretty significantly, how much she garners from the Democratic support of the Florida Democrats. And then the question I guess I'm more curious about, Mariana, is I agree with Kevin. I don't see Republicans campaigning with Rick Scott, but it's going to be interesting to see what Democrats may campaign with Charlie Crist when some of these Democrats themselves could be in a very close election. Yeah, but wait, no, hold on, wait. Now, I'm not questioning whether they come out for Charlie. I'm talking about the candidates that are going to run for office. I think, let's say that it was much closer. Let's say it was a 55-45, Christopher Nannerich. I bet you anything, Mariana, and you traveled this state on the campaign, I don't think you will see many state Democrats who are in tight races want their picture with Charlie. The question is, if Charlie wins big over Nannerich coming up next week, do they come out and say, yeah, Charlie has only been a Democrat for 20 months. We'll get our, you can get our, we'll get our picture with him. Also the Republicans that also voted for those policies as well. Mariana Mancuso here on the Ed Dean Radio Show, her website, politicalhype.com, and Kevin Derby, the senior political writer for the Sunshine State News.com. Kevin, if you were a Republican, let me put you in the seat, or when you are, and you're on the road quite a bit from Tallahassee down here and everywhere else, if you're on the road and you see a Republican in a tight race, Republican primary and in the general election, and they had to get their picture taken as a photo op on a state level, excluding Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, I'm talking elected representative, who do they get their picture with? Is it Putnam, Atwater, or my girl Pam Bondi? Who's the most popular one they get their picture with? How do you like that one, huh? And she's better looking. Yeah. But you want to know something? Before I go to Mariana, you want to know something, Kevin? What's funny? As much as Jeb Bush gets thrown under the bus by national party people, not so much the Republicans, but by those of the Blaze Radio that call it, Dana Lausch called him the notorious Jeb Bush, and it doesn't sell in Florida. I differ with Jeb on some issues, but as bad as Jeb, not as bad, but as bad as Jeb's gotten some bad raps, and rightfully so, about his immigration talk, also about Common Core, he still pretty much remains the most popular politician in the state. Marianne McCuster from politicalhype.com. One of the most fascinating things that I know this doesn't sound fascinating, but also about the marijuana debate is we all, I think, have come to an agreement. It's going to get 60%. The question now everybody talks about is how big of a spread will it be? Will it be 70%? The poll numbers show in some groups it's 80%. Mariana, do you believe that there's a slight possibility that, for example, everybody saw Mitt Romney in 2012 up by 51 points to Obama's 47 in Florida? Next thing we saw, 5 days later, the numbers were reversed. Do you think it's possible that some people will not come out and vote on Election Day, and the marijuana debate might fail by 1 or 2 points below 60% because everybody assumes it's going to pass? Yeah, I mean, Kevin, there is that factor where people just assume it's going to pass. Well, my neighbor will vote for it. I don't need to come out and vote. I can't get out of the house anyways. So the bottom line is that people assume this thing's going to get 60%. You see it no matter what, it's going to get 60%. You don't think people are going to stay home and assume that their neighbor's going to vote in favor of it. Right. Hey, Kevin, real quick, before we go to break, I'm going to keep both of you through the break here, but real quick, some politicians aren't happy with 51+% or 50+1%. They always want 60, 65. Is there 30 seconds left in this segment? Is there any part? I mean, are they trying to reach a 65%, a 70%? What do you hear out there? What would they like to get percentage-wise for medical marijuana? No, but what? Give me a percentage. What would they like to have? 70% easily. Wow. And they just might get it. More on the other side of the break. Mariana Mancuso, Kevin Derby here on the Ed Dean Radio Show. Twenty minutes after the top of the hour. Good morning. It is the syndicated Ed Dean Radio Show, heard all throughout the state. Also, you can go to iHeartRadio.com. Go to iHeart.com on iHeartRadio and just type in WAXC. Also, you can watch us live on the air at EdDeanRadio.com, EdDeanRadio.com. The email address, EdDeanRadio@gmail.com, EdDeanRadio@gmail.com. Mariana Mancuso, her blog is PoliticalHype.com and a senior political reporter for the SunshineStateNews.com. My friend Kevin Derby. Kevin, Good Morning America hits Hillary Clinton for lavish speaking demands. Everybody says that she's the front runner. I don't know if the union's going to buy into it. We got to be for the working man, the working woman out there. How does Hillary Clinton without the help of the media, which is a tough one, how does she transform herself into, quote, middle class America? That's for sure. Mariana, you know that we sit here as conservative commentators. You cannot deny the hypocrisy that some will give Hillary Clinton a free pass when they throw the likes of Mitt Romney and other people out there, yet Hillary Clinton's getting $225,000 for a dinner engagement at a fundraiser in Las Vegas. The bottom line is I think you're going to see this, but I don't know how much. when do you see the liberal press start coming out and say, wait a second, there's a little hypocrisy here. We might have rightfully so because we didn't like Romney because he was worth millions out there. When do you think they start taking pop shots at Hillary Clinton? The RNC, Kevin. If they're smart, I mean, of course, it's going to be an attack, the war on women, so they can't win. So you might as well go broke, period, no matter what. How you approach Hillary Clinton. I mean, we don't like Obama because he's black. At least that's what we're told. But the bottom line is remember, Hillary was saying that they were dead broke when they left the White House, but yet that's not true. And between, are you ready for this? Since 2001 till today, the Clintons have made over $100 million from book deals, speaking engagements. I mean, come on, man. You know that conservatives are going to really own this, and it's going to have to get out there. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the media spends it. Right? You know something, Mariana, it's interesting. I think one of the reasons why that Hillary lost, not the big reason why, but I think one of the reasons why that Hillary lost is because people remember her husband, and remember they complained like about W for moving too much to the middle. They also itched and complained that Clinton was a moderate slash conservative, and sometimes they've never forgiven him on that. And I wonder if Hillary can't win. I mean, how did she distance herself from Obama? How did she, I'd rather have. I mean, Clinton's numbers are incredibly huge. Bill's among a lot of voters, especially among Democrats out there that remember the Clinton economy and how well it was done. So the question has to bring up, does Hillary come across as a fake or genuine, considering she's filthy rich? Remember, the media threw Mitt Romney under the bus in 2012 because he could not connect with the average voter. You know, Kevin Derby, if you had to go with a what's the word? Multiple choice. I don't think the Benghazi thing, even though she's, a worst mistake, what difference does it make? Okay, whatever. I think that's an issue, but that probably in a 1 to 10 might rank 3 or 4. I think the Obamacare could bring a little bit higher since she was the godmother of government health care in in the last 20 years. That might rank on a 6 or whatever. I think if you had to add one to that and play that how she's out of touch with middle America out there, how they've thrown conservatives under the bus for proclaiming to be rich. I think if you replay the clips, all the money she's made and everything else, and yet how she's for the working man, I'm going to tell you something. For a news situation, I think that's up there around a 7 or 8 that could be used against her. May only be the flavor of the month, but you know what? It's got a little bit of longevity to it. Yeah, more right. Well, I'm with you. Listen, I'm just telling you that this could be really thrown back at the Democrats. This could be really thrown back at the media, Mariana, and you could sit back and say, well, Romney didn't detach himself from all those rich people out there. He couldn't portray himself as middle of the road, not middle of the road as far as it comes to political ideas, but addressing and relating with those in the middle of the road when we're talking about middle class people out there. I think it could be a fascinating debate against Hillary coming up in 2016 about, hey, here's a woman that's made over 100. She is filthy rich, and yet how is she in touch with those in the democratic process? Who remembers that? Come on, dude. Bill helps, but the bottom line, does it help enough for Hillary? And remember, nobody talked about Anna Romney's wealth or Mitt Romney's dad. It was Mitt Romney himself. And I'm telling you, when Hillary tries to proclaim as someone who, oh, I'm just one of the poor out there, it's not going to sell. And if it does, then you'll absolutely, Mariana, you'll make the hypocrites out of the left. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. All right, that's a good point. Maybe we need to throw some poor people up there to run for office. Maybe they'll get elected. I don't know. Kevin Derby from the SunshineStateNews.com, Mariana Mancuso from PoliticalHype.com. Thanks for coming on this morning. Thanks so much. Coming up next, the Conservative Black Radio Talk Show has Willie Lawson and also Dan Ruas. This whole situation in Ferguson. Do we have Mississippi burning happening all throughout the country? We'll debate this issue in a few moments. This is the Ed Dean Radio Show.
Both callers are on the line.
All right, thanks. All right, 33 minutes after the top of the hour, heard all throughout the state. It is the Ed Dean Radio Show. The email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. Twitter's at Ed Dean Radio, Facebook.com/Ed Dean Radio. You can also watch it live on the air at eddeanradio.com. Dan Rehwald, sports and political commentator, and my good friend, conservative black radio talk show host, a man who does agree with me that we need to promote race identity politics just to make the liberals look more foolish. My good friend, host of the popular radio show in Tampa, of the WillieLawsonShow.com, my good friend Willie Lawson. So, Willie, when I read what's going on in Ferguson, I'd have to assume with all the riots that somehow, because, again, this doesn't happen every day, but according to the media out there, I would have to assume that there's Mississippi burning happening all throughout the country of what we saw this Michael Brown incident where an 18-year-old got shot. I don't know the final ramifications out there. I haven't taken one position or the other. I just think that the looting's kind of ridiculous. What's your take on what's going on? Good morning. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Hey, Dan, how come, it's amazing that we have these isolated incidents, where there's a cop shooting a black guy, but yet no one talks what happens in Detroit, Philadelphia, Chicago, where there are more black-on-black crime, where actually have black cops that are shooting black thugs out there. This never, ever gets reported by the media. Willie, I remember after the Rodney King trial and verdict, and they said that the outrage and the looting we saw was been building for years among black people. Is this what we see right now again? Dan, let me use a weird analogy here. Growing up, my father is a minister, has degrees, also does a lot of marriage counseling. He is told, and I don't have any kids, but he's told, and Willie will probably agree with me, that there is always a battle between parents and the kids. A good battle. Parents have to win the battle. They have to win the war. because when kids realize that they can finally walk over, hey, we'll go to mom or we'll go to dad, then they know how to manipulate things. Then that means that the kids win, and that cannot allow to happen because why? Parents know for the most part a little bit better how to raise their kids. And I know it's a weird analogy, but when you look at the cops versus the looters, and the next thing you know, it's like we want to have a kumbaya coming to revival service between the looters and the National Guard. That doesn't sell to me. One side has to win, or does there need to be a reasoning together here, Dan? I'm a little confused. Right, right. Willie, somebody has to win the battle here. People loot, they rob, they steal. As the chief of police says, we got people coming in from California. How do you address this? I mean, the point I'm getting at is do we try to sit down and rationalize with the thugs? I don't care if they're white, black, or Hispanic, or what should be the role of the police, the National Guard? I got liberals on Facebook crying for a national state of emergency that the president needs to be putting his foot down. Willie, before I go to Dan, you as a black conservative, do you think that the protesters in the black community are outraged over that a guy was shot, or why are they looting? Why are they having protests? I mean, do you think there's passion there? I mean, even though they're coming from other states, what is the real reason why they're protesting, rioting, and looting? Dan Ruwask. let me throw a little bit of politics mix into this. Can you imagine if you and I we're not rioting, but we were protesting? We were like Pitbull. Hey, don't stop the party. You know what I'm saying? And we were out there protesting against, I don't know, Obamacare, a tax situation at night, peaceful protest. The news media would be out there left and right. Young conservatives like Dan Ruwas and Ed Dean, anti-government sentiment. And when you think about it for a second, I mean, if you really want to play the partisan line or play party words here, aren't these people being anti-government in some of their protests because they don't like the local police? Isn't that anti-government? Hey, Willie, the only good thing about this whole riot is some of the news media got tear gassed. Oh, I love it. Willie, can you imagine if Willie was out there with his press? I've hung out with Willie in his radio show, and he does a good job. He's got a fan base, especially all the women. They love Willie. And my point is, Willie, if you were out there on a press pass, dude, you would be the first one they would gas because they wouldn't believe you're a member of the press. Because no, Willie, listen, Willie's a good friend of mine, and Dan, we laugh and we can laugh because we're having a good time. Willie, because nobody believes that there are any black conservatives out there. If Willie had his press pass, we would have been gassed, Willie. Really? Hey, Willie, hold on. Willie, was it you? I was talking to Kevin Jackson yesterday. One of you guys told me this a while back. I think when it was the Trayvon Martin. Remember, they thought they were going to have race riots. And Willie, was it you that were telling me, dude, if you had the opportunity, you would open up like a hot dog stand or a barbecue stand, and you said, why not make a few bucks out of it? It was Kevin. Come on, Dan. Yeah, you know that's funny. All right. I'll tell you what I'll do. Let me take a quick break right now. And so, anyways, I'm going to have more of Willie. By the way, Willie, am I on your show today? They can go to, how long am I on for? No, seriously, I mean, because I got a lot of running around. I'm going to probably, can I do it on the road? I'm going to be in the car today. I can do it on the road? All right. So they can listen at willielawsonshow.com, correct? All right, and we'll talk about race politics. We always like talking about that. Now, and of course, when we mentioned race, Dan hears and go, yeah, I watched the Daytona 500 last. I'm like, not that race, idiot. Anyways, I'm just joking. Back in a few moments, more with conservative black radio talk show host, my friend Willie Lawson from the WillieLawsonShow.com, and sports and political commentator Dan Ruwas. Here's the question for you. Did evangelicals stay home in the 2012 election, and will they stay home in 2014? Yes and no. Back in a few moments, Ed Dean Radio Show. Hey, is this off? So Willie goes, man, Willie's black. He goes, man, I'd be out there with a barbecue stand and some Kool-Aid selling it to people. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Make a couple bucks. So Rhett just is going to walk in and.
Is he here? No, he's at Bible study now. He won't come in now.
No, you got a nice quiet morning then. Do you know Steve Meyer? Nerdy. This guy's got a show like on a weekend somewhere, and he's trying to tell me, because yesterday I was talking about how the evangelicals didn't vote and less numbers for Romney, and well, you need to get some new information. So I said, here's the blogs here. Evangelicals didn't come out then. You need to get some new numbers. So I said back, I suggest you get some new numbers. I said, if you had 1,000 voters in an area, but only 200 show up, but 95% of the 200 voted for Romney, those numbers mean crap. Like, this guy's a nerd. I've heard him speak. I don't even know why I'm even debating this guy.
Josh was listening. He said he agrees with you 100% on the environment.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I'm all for cleaning up things. At least I have a plan. More beers, more boating, more gas in the water.
Coming in after this.
All right. I got to kill time for like an hour. I mean, 45. I'm going to just kill time here, man. I may take a nap for about 15 minutes. I got to get the tailor lady's got up here on 58 to cut my clothes. I can't pay up till 9.
No worries. You're not bothering me.
When Dr. Mallon comes on, I want to ask him, what's his first name? Water? I love this song, dude. Can we just keep this up for a few moments? I love this type of music. It's mellow. I don't smoke, folks, so something's got to keep me mellow. Dan Ruas has known me for 15 years. He and I are buddies. He knows I don't smoke. But I mean, I love good music. I mean, I can just fall asleep. Or then, well, then again, if you listen to some of the pro marijuana people, they should give joints to all the people riding out there, Willie, and they all would have been mellow. Probably so. All right. More of the Ed Dean Radio Show, conservative radio talk show host Willie Lawson. I'll be on his show at 10 o'clock this morning at willielawsonshow.com. My good friend Dan Ruas, also political and sports commentator here on the Ed Dean Radio Show. I don't even know why. I was telling my producer, Jim, why? I mean, out of all the issues, and I get boatloads of emails from many of you listeners out there at eddeanradio@gmail.com, and I answer them all. But listen, when it comes to numbers, I know my numbers. Been a news reporter, I know my facts. The bottom line here, Willie, is evangelicals did not show up for Mitt Romney in 2012. The percentage is down. Even the numbers are down from 2008 and 2004. The question is, are evangelicals coming out this year, and are they coming out in 2016, Willie? I'll start with you. Dan, are they not coming out because? Well, I mean, okay. Well, let's be honest. The same-sex marriage debate's out there now. That's something evangelicals can get on board. But I mean, is it because they're turned off? They don't find a candidate they're liking, or is it because there's not much issues that portray themselves to be in the limelight of the evangelicals? I mean, why are they staying home? Right, right. You know, Willie, if evangelicals are coming out in a state, it's based on a state issue. It's not based on them voting for Obama or against Obama. Well, let me ask you this. Are they juicing anything up? Because you already said that they aren't ginning anything up. Dan, did you catch that? Okay. I had to throw that in there. Little snoop. All right. Anyways, hey, Willie, what are we talking about today on the show, by the way? Again. Ah! Wow. Charlie Chris at least is not my Key West friend. By the way, I'm gonna be on Newsmax TV tomorrow. I'll be down in Dan. I'll be down in West Palm in your area near Boynton. Now you're south of me. I'm down there like once a week on Newsmax. Hey Dan, did you see this real quick? University of Central Florida. This was all over the news yesterday. Claim to fame, it's one of the top 58 schools that recognize the LGBT, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. I was sitting there going, wait a second, what about grades? What about even being a party school? I mean, LGBT, is this the new flavor of the month now that is a big issue to talk about? Yeah, and Rick Scott raised all those property taxes, which he cannot do, by the way. I'm just kind of curious where that's coming from. I'm just, no, when I think of LGBT, I'm thinking there's so much love no, there's so much love in the LBC, Snoop Doggy Dog, D-O-double-G. I'm just, LBGT, when did this become a flipping issue? All right, Willie Lawson today, I'll be on with him at 10 o'clock. They want me back, going back to bed. At 10 a.m. this morning, WillieLawsonShow.com, WillieLawsonShow.com. My good friend Dan Ruas Thank you for getting up with me this early, Dan. I know you didn't go to bed yet, did you? All right. Well, good. Well, good. We need to go party up with Charlie down in Key West one night. All right, Dan Ruas. Are you really? All right. Well, tell me you need to get a real speaker. Outside. You should be. All right. Listen, both of you coming on. I appreciate. Thanks for coming on, both of you. Thanks, brother. All right. More of the. I'll be on today with Willie Lawson on the WillieLawsonShow.com. The email address: eddeanradio@gmail.com. eddeanradio@gmail.com. We'll see you in 22 hours. Ugh.